That works. Okay, we'll get started. I just want to say thank you everyone so much for joining our live webinar and happy Halloween. Shadi and I are really excited to present to you guys today, and we really tried to make this like a fun presentation and very interactive, and you'll see some cute animations and some ghosts and things along the way, but overall, we really hope that this is helpful for all of you who have joined. And I know that some of you may be in school currently or just graduated or even far along in your career. And even for those who already have a lot of experience in an office, hopefully you walk away with at least one thing that you've learned in this. But again, just really want this to be interactive. So if you do have a question, feel free to either put it in the chat or if you don't mind raising your hand, and then we could just call on you and feel free to mention your question. So I guess also if you're in costume, I asked if you want to put what costume you are in the chat, just because we want to make sure that we kind of keep up with the Halloween theme. And yeah, so we'll talk about a little bit about applying for firms. We talked a little bit about portfolio review, ARE exams, and yeah, again, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask Shadi and I. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Nikki Pareda. I'm a project manager at the Lens Group in Lakeland, Florida, and I've been practicing in the field of architecture for 8 years now. I graduated with my master's degree from FIU in Miami, and currently I am the associate director for AIA Tampa Bay. I have been for the past 2 years, but I was recently elected as associate director at large for the entire state of Florida. So I'm kind of overlapping 2 roles there. And I started doing both this year, and I will be transitioning off of the local chapter into the state chapter and be the associate director at large for 2024 as well. And with all that to say, that's basically my role is to serve and help associates specifically. So those who have graduated from architecture school and are kind of in that in between role from graduating and getting licensed. So anything along the lines of getting your licensure, along the lines of networking, getting a job, assisting and advocating for you for basically whatever it is that you need in order to assist you throughout your career in order to become licensed. So that's a little bit about me, and then I'll pass it over to Shadia.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikki. Hello, everybody. My name is Shadia Jaramillo. I'm a recently licensed architect, and I'm the counterpart of the Associate Director at Large role. I've been serving in this role for 2 years now. This is my second and last term. And I'm a project architect at Goodwin Mills Cawood. I'm also part of the AIA Florida Northwest chapter. That includes Pensacola, Panama City, Destin area, for those that don't know. And like Nikki said, our role is really to serve associates all over Florida, and also to serve the associate directors in all 13 components, which are really your direct tie of communication with the state board and us as associate directors at large. So if you have any questions, our contact info is right here, but it'll also be at the end if you miss taking a photo, so that you can always contact us. And if you have any questions, reach out for guidance or any resources that you need. We're here to help. So, okay, now the exciting part of the presentation, the poll, which I almost forgot about.
There's a poll up on your screen. If everyone could just take a moment to select one of these. So the question is, where are you in your career? So are you a student? Are you a recent grad? Are you around 3 to 5 years out of school? Or are you 5+ years out of school? So if you could take a moment to answer that, that'll help Shadi and I kind of gauge the conversation and what we need to kind of pinpoint and talk about. And I guess Crystal, can you let us know when that's been completed?
Yeah, I think we'll be able to see the results if I'm not wrong. Oh,
okay.
Awesome.
Cool. Okay, so it looks like the majority of you, 46%, are students. And I don't know, I guess everybody could see this, but 31% is recent grad, 8% is 3 to 5 years, and we got 15% 5+ years. Okay,
Mhm.
so we've got a pretty good amount of 5+ years, which I was surprised to see, but looks like mainly students, recent grads.
Which is really good because I feel like this is super helpful specifically for students on recent grads. So we hope that this is, you know, a helpful resource for you moving forward in your career. Okay, should we go ahead?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So Nikki and I, when we were making this presentation, we talked about, you know, what were things that we wish we would have known. And there were more than 5, but we're both going to talk about our main 5 reasons or 5 things we wish we would have known before joining the profession. So number 1, you are not an architect once you graduate. And this gets a little bit complicated because when people that are not familiar with the profession start asking you, oh, what you are, what profession you do, you can't really say you're an architect because you're not licensed. But on this topic, we're going to touch later on about how to get licensed, how to become an architect, what are the things that you need to do in order to become one. So don't be spooked. You can become an architect. It's just that you need to expand your knowledge and take a couple of tests, 6 to be exact. But we're going to touch more on that later. Number 2, designing is about 10% of the life of a project. And this percentage can really change, but what you do in school is a very minimal part of what really the process of architecture of the life of a project is. There's so much more that we do as architects or architectural designers. We coordinate, we are like our little project managers. We coordinate all the disciplines, like I said, and we do specifications, we go on site visits, we respond to RFIs and submittals, and there's just so much more than designing. And of course, design is involved in every stage of the game. You will continue to design, but we don't do it like we do in school where we're so hyper focused on that specific task. So this is something that you have to keep in mind so that you're not a little disappointed when you join the profession, unless you go for a role where you only design, and that's completely viable as well. So number 3, network. I cannot stress this enough. Making connections, meeting new people, being able to exchange ideas with others that are in your field or outside of your field is extremely beneficial, especially when you're new to the field, because you don't know what opportunities out there and what you can learn are out there and what you can learn from others that will really benefit and propel your career. So I would definitely advise you to get involved and meet new people. Number 4, be open to trying new things. There's a lot of misconception about different tasks involved in architecture and the idea of what an architect does, which is usually people that might not be familiar with the profession think that all we do is draw. And that's not necessarily true. So being open to trying new things, maybe specifications. You don't know if it's something that you're really going to love, and that's where you're going to want to focus on. So really be open to trying new things. You're new to the field, and ask as many questions that as you need. And number 5, for me specifically, when I graduated, it really felt like I was going to school all over again, just because I was learning so much. I felt like I knew nothing. And this is not to scare you, but to really emphasize that asking questions is not a bad thing, and that you are, at the beginning, you're going to be kind of like a sponge. You're going to be absorbing and learning new things. So asking questions and embracing the process, because ultimately what you want is to become a competent and well-rounded person, and hopefully an architect. So I think I talked too much.
Well, good. And for those of you, I just saw a few more people join. For those of you who have just joined, feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions, because we want to make sure this is interactive and not just Shadi and I giving a presentation.
Yes, please.
Or you
have
can
specific questions.
Yeah, feel free to put your questions in the chat too, and we'll help you out. So for me, 5 things I wish I would have known before joining the profession. These are truly 5 things that I wish I would have known. Like, I wish somebody would have told me when I was in architecture school. But you know, hindsight's 2020. So for me, document everything. I don't think I did a good enough job doing this when I was in architecture school. I also did not have a good enough camera at the time. I wish I would have had better photos of all my models and all my work that I did, because you spend so much time and they're like so beautiful that you want to make sure you capture everything. So, and if you want to see somebody who has done a really excellent job documenting a lot, look at Shadia's Instagram. She has documented an incredible amount of work and all of the stuff that she's been involved with. You'll see that at the end of the page. She's a great example of that. But and also just for your portfolio and resume. And later on, you might want to go after awards, and you need to make sure you document everything. And that includes those who are in the profession now. It's good to take site photos when you're out there in construction sites, using your own camera. So those are your own photographs that you can back up. Number 7, what I mean by you are your own brand, reputation is everything, is eventually, and you know, maybe early on in your career, you're still getting your feet wet, but eventually you will get to know the clients very well, and they'll get to know, trust, and respect you for all the work that you've put in. Because usually as a project manager, if you get to that stage, you are the person that the client will go to on a daily basis, on a weekly basis on the project. So it's really important to like basically let them get to know you, and you get to know them in a very respectful way, in a personal way. And a lot of times clients will follow you for work, especially if you build enough rapport with them. Number 8, Shadia kind of, you know, she mentioned this, but I'm going to repeat it. Ask all the questions, especially when you're like fresh out of school. Everyone expects you to have all the questions and not have all the answers. And I think it's actually very endearing when a lot of students ask questions. And I know when I graduated, I felt very shy to ask questions because I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to know everything. Like, I have a degree. But the truth is that it's expected that you may be a little bit green or even naive to certain things in the field, and that's totally okay. I think it's endearing, and I think it's really a great opportunity for people to get to know you and your personality when you ask questions. We have a wonderful young designer here at our firm who, when she started, she kept raising her hand and asking tons of questions, and everyone loves it. And now everyone expects her to have all the questions, because truly, a lot of people in the room will have that question too. Mm-hmm. So I love when people ask questions, because I may be too shy, and I've been doing this for 8 years. So it's, you know, like, it's, you know, don't be afraid. It's really endearing. Number 9 is probably my favorite. And if you listen to absolutely nothing I just said, try to listen to number 9. Save your coworkers' coffee preferences on your cell phone. I learned this from a coworker, and I thought it was actually really sweet. She asked me once if I liked Starbucks, and she asked me what my favorite coffee was. I said chai tea latte with not fat milk. And in 6 months later, I was going through a final permit submission for a big project. I was so stressed. I didn't have breakfast or anything. And when I came to my office, there was a chai tea latte on my desk. And she did not have to do that, but she sure as heck saved my preference on her phone. And to me, that was the most thoughtful thing. And she would do that for all her coworkers every once in a while. So I started doing that myself. So yeah, just if you want to build a good rapport with your team, remember their coffee preferences, or tea. You may not be a coffee person.
That's really sweet.
Yeah, it was so nice of her. And then 10, find a mentor, become a mentor to others. Being a woman, one thing that I learned is, at least for me, I sought after a female mentor specifically in my field, especially in architecture. Men as well. I mean, you could find any mentor, but I found a specific one that I found to be extremely polished, poised, intelligent, fun, you know, incredible. And she was like twice my age in the field of architecture, and I respect her and I love her so much. And I've been able to build a rapport with her in that whenever I feel, you know, like any doubts or any questions, I can go to her in private, or we can go out to lunch. I think it's always important. And we no longer work together, but we still meet up for, you know, lunch and those questions, even outside of the office. And then it's good to be that for someone. You know, I saw some people in the poll earlier that you're 3 to 5 years out of school, you may be the perfect mentor to somebody who just graduated, or somebody who's 5+ years out of school, you may be the perfect mentor to those 3 to 5, year people. So it's always good to kind of get back to that once you get your mentor.
100%. I really love the coffee, saving everyone's coffee order, because that's very thoughtful.
Yeah, thank you. I will pass it on to Emily. She's the one that gave me the idea. Okay, so these are a little cheesy but cute, but these are portfolio and resume tips specifically geared towards students, however, can also be geared towards those who have been in the profession for a while. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I mean, these are pretty much straightforward, but just want to reiterate. It's always good to select your best work. And in my opinion, our opinion, kind of bring that towards the front, because if you've ever looked through a portfolio, a lot of times you're kind of looking at the beginning and you see a lot of really wow images because first impressions are everything. And then you kind of get a little quicker when you turn the pages. So I think it's always good to put your best and, if possible, most recent work towards the front. And number 2 is use high quality images. I've seen some portfolios that I've reviewed that have these incredible images, but they're really small. Sometimes you can use up like the entire spread of just one high quality image. Or you'll have some really fuzzy, not so great quality work next to some great work. But the fuzziness kind of takes away from the quality of the overall portfolio. So I would highly recommend to use your best like images when you can. Seek feedback. Any student who's on the call right now, if you're working on a portfolio and you want Shadia or I to review it and give you feedback, feel free to email that to us. We're happy to look at it. That's part of also what we do, and we're happy to provide. Or just give it to your peer or someone that you trust. It's really good to get some pretty good feedback for free in that case. And then the last one is consistency. I'm going to mention something I mentioned to Shadia the other day. Canva, am I saying that right?
Canva.
Is the Canva, well, actually Canva is how we made this awesome presentation.
Oh yeah.
It is a free website tool that you can make amazing presentations with. Shadia and I decided to pay $14 for a subscription, but that is to create this presentation in particular, but the free stuff on there is pretty good. But I'm bringing that up because Canva could make not make your portfolio, but you can use it as a template for a portfolio, and it's a really good one. It's also really good for resumes. So for those who are in the field now and may want to consider refreshing their resume or portfolio or revamping it, Canva is a great option for that. I also love it because there's several templates that have the same kind of color palette, so it feels very consistent. So you might have like your resume that's in yellow and it's followed by a CV that's in yellow and it's got the same kind of stylistic font. And then your portfolio, and it has the same like stylistic font. So those are my 4, I would say, tips for a good portfolio.
On that note, I know that we're used to using InDesign, but Canva is so much more user-friendly. And like Nikki said, you can literally do your personal branding in there, all your colors and fonts and everything. So it's really easy to use. So I recommend it. Not sponsored.
Yeah, not sponsored. I wish. The majority of the graphics, well, I guess everybody kind of does their own thing, but like AI Tampa Bay, the majority of our graphics come from Canva. Shadia, I think all the graphics you've done for this year's associate events have been in Canva. So yeah, highly recommended.
Oh, I thought someone said something, but I don't think so. Okay, so now tips for interviewing. And I will be quite honest, I'm not the best person at interviews. I usually get a little bit nervous on interviews, but I think the number one thing I would say to decrease that, if you're the type of person, is prepare, be informed about the projects that the firm that you're interviewing with does, and then the people, like maybe they have different disciplines, if it's an AE firm or if it's just an A firm. Try to do research beforehand, maybe a little bit about the history of the company, like when it was founded and things like that, because I feel like that will help you feel a little bit at ease and allow you not to panic during the interview. Also, I would say do a little bit of research regarding the position and the tasks that you would like to do, while at this firm, just so that you can ask the right questions during the interview and things that would really benefit and propel your growth. Number two is ask about the work culture and what a typical day looks like for someone that's going to be in the role that you're applying for. And I say this because number one, for me, culture is important. I mean, you're spending what most of the day with, oh, someone's unmuted. You're spending most of your day with people at the office, even more than with your family or significant others. And so that, like, being able to work with people that have a positive attitude or are very passionate about what they do, no negativity, those are things that are important for me. So that's why I would really advise you to ask about the work culture. And if you can even talk to the people that work at the firm that you're applying to as well. I know that a lot of firms do a first interview with maybe the hiring committee or whoever's part of that, and then they let you kind of talk to the employees to get a feel of what the people that work there are like. And what a typical day looks like. I say this because you will definitely want to know what are the tasks that you're going to be working on. Are you going to be involved in everything in a life of a project, from SDs to CDs and CA? Are you going to have an opportunity to go to site visits? What are the things that you will be able to do when you're at this firm? And this is important too, and we're going to touch on this later. You have to get hours in order to get licensed, and there are different categories of hours. So going somewhere that's going to give you the opportunity to complete those hours is very important. I know that one of the hardest categories to get is CA, which is construction administration, which is when you go on site and do field observations and things like that. And I would highly recommend you advocate for that if you are right now somewhere where you don't get those opportunities. And if you're thinking of interviewing somewhere else, definitely bring that up to the table. And then last but not least, be yourself. Someone once told me that no one can teach you how to be you, and no one can teach you personality. You can learn how to be an architect, you can learn everything in the field, but that's something that you can't learn. And when they're hiring you, you're not doing a test to see if you know how to use Revit, or if you know how to put a building set of documents together. So just be yourself. They will hire you also for your attitude and your initiative and your spirit and all of that. So definitely be yourself.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, just to piggyback off of what you just said, Shadia, early on in my career, I was still fairly new. I was asked to be a part of interviews, and a lot of you will be asked, or a lot of you probably have been a part of interviews, but I think once you're on the other side interviewing somebody, especially who's going to be your new coworker, being yourself part is so important, because like you're gonna spend all day with this person now, and you want to make sure that you get along. And there's nothing wrong about like asking the interviewer questions about like company culture and what do you guys like to do for fun outside of work, and how do you celebrate holidays? Can you wear ears at the office? Like just stuff like that, because you know, like most of our life is spent in the office. But anywho, I have 3 more tips just really quickly on interviewing. You did mention it quickly, Shadia, but research the firm. If you know who's going to interview you, which a lot of times you don't, but if you do, I would look them up on LinkedIn, look at what they've done, look at what they're interested in, because there might be a link to that. I was telling Shadia how there's a potential client that our office was trying to gain. And I found out that through research, I found out that him and I share the exact same interest in the same musical artist. And I'm in love with that musical artist. And when I found out that the client was too, I was able to make that connection, and we really bonded over that. And now he's our client. So it worked out really well. So researching the firm or the person that's going to interview you will definitely help. And show your enthusiasm. I definitely think it's, again, I'm going to use the word endearing, because I love when I interview recent grads and they're like hungry and excited, and they're like, and maybe they even admit like, I don't even know what I'm doing, but like, I just can't wait to do it all and to learn it. And that's okay. Like for me, like somebody who's enthusiastic and hungry and ready to learn and will like get to the office and like ask all the questions, to me, that's like, it means so much. And I know it means a lot to other people hiring versus somebody who thinks they know it all, pretends to know it all, and who's kind of like a stickler, you know, like just your personality is one of your best like embellishments and assets. And even if you're not that kind of personality to like, you know, be all excited, like maybe I would be or Shadia would be, but that's okay because just whatever you're comfortable with, people will see that through the way you speak, regardless, you know. So yeah. And then follow-ups. This is a soft skill that I learned kind of recently through a webinar, but it's important to follow up with just a really kind thank you email, whether you got the invitation through email or maybe on LinkedIn or however you've gotten it. One step above that is a handwritten letter. There's something really nice, like very memorable about somebody who takes the time to write a handwritten letter, even if you drop it off at the office. That's a good one. So if you can't,
Definitely.
that's another step beyond. Yeah. So soft skills are really critical.
Okay, I'm finding my mouse. Okay,
Yep.
got it. Okay, so now we have large versus small firm, and we're not going to go through like the little things that we've listed here. We're more going to talk about like our personal experiences because Nikki and I both have different paths into the profession. So I started at a small firm and now I'm at a larger firm. Now there's a little bit of a point here. I'm at a larger firm, but at a small location of the larger firm. So it still feels like I'm in a smaller firm, but here goes my story. So graduated school, joined a small firm that mainly did high-end residential and small commercial. Now, one of the things that you should really think of before joining the profession is what project types or typologies you would like to work on. I started working at higher end residential, which is mainly with construction. And I think that set me back a little bit just because now I'm at a firm that does everything but residential, single family. And all the knowledge that I earned with wood construction and my experience there, it's like out the window in a way, just because we don't do type 5 building construction. And so that's one point. Now, as soon as you start working for a small firm, it's like heads on, thrown into the sharks, if that's a saying. You do everything. I mean, you meet with clients, you're writing proposals, you are answering the phone if they don't have an office admin. And there's a lot of things that you're going to do and be exposed to that could really make you grow really fast because you kind of have to, you have no other option. And at the firm I worked at, I think we were like 6 or 7 people, including the principals. So that's small. And so I was able to grow really fast and get very confident really quickly in how to manage a project. And then one of the things that we've mentioned several times during this talk is life of a project. I was exposed to every single phase early on in my career and was able to really have a holistic picture of what a typical architectural project moves through to get to it being built or renovated or whatever it is. So that's coming from a small firm. Now, when I jump to the larger firm, I feel, and this is my personal experience, that I wasn't pigeonholed into doing one specific task just because I feel like they've seen me as someone that was able to manage projects from scratch all the way to construction or fruition. And so I was able to be put in a position where I could manage projects at a larger firm, and I could meet with clients. They had confidence in me that I could do that. And the good thing about working at a larger firm is that they have more resources because they have more people and potentially more funds. And so the support of licensure is potentially better at a larger firm. The firm that I was at did not have any support, previously did not have any support for people going through the test, but then the firm that I'm now with does. So those are things that you need to consider, and those are things that you can ask while you're interviewing as well. And I would highly recommend doing that. This is not to say that every single small firm supports your path to licensure or every single large firm supports your path to licensure. It can differ. There's no discrimination when it comes to large versus small versus medium. But those are the things that I would say I would definitely ask, especially coming out of school, the types of projects, what opportunities you're going to be given to grow and expand your knowledge, and the support of licensure, just because it's so expensive, so time consuming. So yeah, those are my points. I'll move to the next sheet.
Yeah.
Nikki.
So Shadia just recapped her experience going from a small firm to a large firm. My experience is going from a large firm to a small firm. So I'm kind of the opposite. I started at a 200-person architecture and engineering company. And now I'm at a 50-person architecture firm, which still is relatively big for architecture firms, but still it's smaller than 200. But I guess if I'm giving any sort of advice for anybody who's in school or might be graduating, there's definitely pros to each. You may be not even considering or not even caring what you get into as long as you get a job, but it is good to keep in mind. One thing I'm going to repeat that Shadia said is, if there's something that kind of strikes a chord with you, like, hey, it would be really cool to do healthcare, make sure you research firms that does healthcare. Or, hey, it would be really cool to do residential or multifamily, make sure you research firms that do that. If you don't care, or if you don't know, which I didn't know when I was in school what I wanted to do, just, okay, in that case, just, it's probably good to go to a firm that does a bunch of stuff. I mean, at the Lutz Group, at the firm that I'm in now, we are multifaceted. We do a bunch of different projects, which is partially why one of the reasons why I love working here, because there's so many opportunities to do so much. But if you know that you want to do like single family residential, there are firms that just do that. But make sure you do your research, because once you get into that firm, especially if they do that specialty, you could become really, really good at that. But there's some cons to that too, because, for example, sometimes in multifamily residential single family, that's one of the ones that kind of doesn't do so well in the economic downturn. But if you go to government work in healthcare, sometimes that's the one that really does well in economic downturn. So it really just depends. There's pros and cons to each. I am going to read a little bit on here because I think it is important. For smaller firms, at least in my experience, which is the one I'm at now, as somebody who was thrown into the fire when I got here, all of a sudden I was doing contracts, AI contracts, proposals, doing requests for bids, setting up bid meetings for GCs, going onto the field by myself for construction administration, designing everything from napkin sketch all the way to permit drawings, and setting up the meetings with the owners and the city and doing presentations. I did none of that when I was at a big firm. When I was at a big firm, I was doing red lines, CAD, and Revit. That was like very, very structured, kind of blinders on, making sure I did the production. That was just my personal experience. I think personally, and I know that everybody has their own opinion on this, but I'm just going to say my opinion. I actually think it was great going from a big firm to a small firm, because from a big firm, I got really, really good at doing production. I got pretty good at doing details because that's all I was doing. I was very narrow focused on looking at the details of things and doing red lines and being very specific. And then with all that knowledge, I then became a project manager at a small firm and was able to relate that experience into the broader things that I had to do. That's my experience personally. I could see it being good the other way around, but I digress. And I guess maybe some cons for working in a small firm. It may be overwhelming, but you'll get over it. You'll be fine. Sometimes there is less administrative support. So you may be spending a ton of time doing a lot of paperwork and following up with, your engineers, chasing them down for RFIs and submittals, versus somebody else who might be able to do that stuff for you. So that's kind of a con. And sometimes they offer less resources, but not always. So
yeah. Oh, one thing I just thought of when you said resources, potentially at a larger firm, you'll have people that, like Nikki said, are specialized in one thing. And so those people can become resources to you. So I would say that's another pro of a larger firm. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it really depends on like what you want, what project typologies you want to work on, and what you're thinking your path in the architecture field is going to look like. Because I could also see like maybe potentially you starting at a firm where you're only working on one project typology, and once you want to move somewhere else, it's a little bit difficult to get into working on another project typology when you've been so hyper focused on maybe only doing residential, or only doing healthcare. So yeah, experiencing a lot of project typologies at the beginning of your career is probably like a great way to start, I would say.
And feel
But
free to interrupt us if you have any questions on any of this, because I know we've kind of spread a lot of information, but feel free.
okay, so in doing this presentation, we also wanted to kind of show you all what things you could do post-graduation, or if you're part of the field right now within AI Florida, what are the opportunities that are out there. This year, we developed a one-pager, and if you scan the QR code, you're going to be able to see all of the benefits associated with your associate AI membership. And then as an associate member, you can run or volunteer for different positions in the different boards across the state in all 13 components. And this actually does not only pertain to AI Florida, because even if you end up moving to another state, there's still opportunities like this in all 50 states throughout the country. So you can be able to run for associate director in your local component, or like Nikki and I, that we're Nikki's still associate director of Tampa at the moment. She's overlapping, but we both did associate director locally, and now we're both on the state board as associate directors at large. You can actually run for vice president as associate. You don't have to be licensed for that. Fun fact. You can run for chapter directors. You can also participate in local committees if you're not someone that wants to jump to a leadership role right away after school. There's just so much to get involved, to give back, to learn from others. So we would highly suggest becoming part of AI Florida.
Yay.
Nikki, do you want to say anything else?
Well, I actually want to piggyback something that Barbara had just put in the chat, which I totally agree with. Sometimes you're right, Barbara, like just finding a job is just a matter of, being able to support yourself in whatever situation you're in. And what I've really learned is every single job has a con. Every single job has a pro. So like you got to pick and choose your battles, but in my opinion, there's nowhere that's going to have like no con, like everything's going to have something. So you're right. And I love that you said, make the cons part of your work ethic and push through those things. Cause you may not like your commute. Like, for example, my first job was 2 hours away each way. It was awful to commute, but I absolutely loved the job I had, and I love the company I worked for. And during that commute, I was listening to audiobooks and learning a different language. So just make it work for you.
I will say on that, even if you work somewhere where there are things that you don't like, you can become the advocate of change of that company and just make it better. At the end of the day, we want to be those positive elements. We're bringing like positive change to the firm, improving their work culture or whatever it is. So, you can make change as well. And hopefully, even if you're just right out of school, you still have a say and your voice matters. So don't ever feel like you can't speak up as well. So
yeah.
Okay, the famous life of a project. This is very shrunk. So shrunk down. It's not the complete life of a project, but this is like a very brief intro. Yeah, a very brief intro into a life of a project. So first you do schematic design and pre-design, I guess. Schematic design is basically what you do in school, where you're like going through the programming, looking at the scope of work, meeting with the client, seeing what their needs are so that you can satisfy that and potentially improve their efficiency or whatever it is that the task is, or the project is. So you're doing sketches, doing renderings and stuff like that. So that's the first phase. Usually the smallest phase of the life of a project. After that, you jump into when the design is kind of like nailed down, where adjacencies are thought of, you moved into design development. And this is where all of the disciplines come in and all the consultants come in. So you start working with engineers, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, civil. Maybe you start working with an acoustical consultant or a light consultant. The way I actually explain this phase to people is that we architects are kind of like orchestra directors. And we're directing the orchestra, making sure everything's coordinated, everything is sounding like it should. So you will be that. And then after that, after you have selected all the systems and all of that, you move into the construction documentation phase. And I also have another funny way of explaining this, specifically for people that are not familiar with this phase of architecture and what really architects do, is that, you know, when you buy a piece of furniture and you get a little set of instructions on how to assemble it, this is it. This is what you will be doing, a set of instructions on how to put together a building or how to build, renovate, whatever, what you've been tasked to do. And this set of documents becomes a permit set, which is what you're gonna use to develop this design, building, renovation, whatever it is. And during the construction administration phase, the architect is gonna do field observations, it's gonna respond to RFIs, submittals, it's gonna go to owner architect contractor meetings, which is OSC meetings, and just making sure that the way that the project is moving along, getting built, renovated, it's compliant with the set of documents that you have developed. So in a nutshell, this is the summary of a life of a project. And there's more phases after CA, but we're not going to touch on that today. Nikki, do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, most of you probably already know this, but for those who may be in school, this is just RFIs, our request for information, and basically what that is questions about the drawings. And so usually in the last phase, which is construction administration, there's a lot of RFIs, i.e. questions that come to the architect or project manager. You can get anywhere between like 20 to 200 or even more, depending on the size of the project. And they're usually pretty, I mean, hopefully, knock on wood, they're good questions. And they sometimes spark some redesign or some challenges that you have to work through with the general contractor. And then a submittal is essentially a shop drawing. And what a shop drawing is basically a kind of like a manuscript from the manufacturer of, hey, this is what we're going to provide to you. For example, if you specify an elevator, you might have specified Koni or ThyssenKrupp, which are two elevator manufacturers, and Koni will then provide to you a shop drawing saying, this is the elevator that I think you want per your drawings. Can you please review it? And you would check the electrical requirements. You would check the size of the cab. You would check the opening and how the door opens, and you would review it and stamp it for review. You would do that for every single element of your building. So you're going to have anywhere between, again, it depends on the size of the building, but could have between 10 to 200 shop drawings. So construction administration, although a small portion usually of our fee, is usually a huge part of what we do.
Yeah.
And it is extremely important part of what we do. It's actually my favorite part, I think, of life of a project.
Same here. I was gonna say that one and schematic design, because I can't let go of that, are probably my favorite parts.
Yeah.
I think just seeing the product of your creativity come to life, it's something that I can't explain, but you feel proud of yourself when you're like, I drew that, even if it's just like a cabinet, a piece of cabinetry, you know, you're like, I drew that, that is my design. It's really an amazing feeling.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we have finally come to the slide about the AREs, which stands for Architecture Registration Exam. And I apologize to those who are already licensed or those who have gone through the examination. But then to those who haven't started, who may be in school, this is really a slide for you. So I'm just gonna do a really quick intro into the AREs before we recap or before we end the presentation. But Shadia mentioned earlier, so there's 3 requirements that you need in order to become a licensed architect. And the first requirement is an accredited degree, which is can be an accredited bachelor's degree or master's degree, depending on the school you go to. So a lot of you already have that or you're working towards that. Number 2 is the AXP, which is a fancy way of saying your hours of experience that you have working for a licensed architect. Typically, you need about 3.5 years of experience working for a licensed architect before you can become licensed. And the reason why it's that long is because typically from the time you have a napkin sketch to the time that building is built, it's roughly 3 years. So it gives you enough time to experience the life of an entire built project. So that's kind of the thought behind it. And then the exam is the last one, which arguably is the most difficult. And that is that is 6 different exams that you have to take in order to get your license. And every single exam of the 6 costs $235 each. So in total, it would cost you $1,410 in order to pass all your exams. You can take these exams in any order that you wish. However, there is a recommendation of order to take your exams, and it's roughly the recommendations or roughly the name of the exams that you see there. So these circles with the little letters on them, that is the acronym for those exams. So PCM, that is practice management, PJM, project management. And I kind of screwed this up. CE was supposed to be the next one, which is construction and evaluation. So those 3 are the first 3 exams that are kind of recommended to take. The reason why is because those are what's called the professional practice exams, and they talk about essentially the beginning phases of a design and also the professional practice of architecture before you even engage into a design project, specifically like contracts and how you build the client and just a lot about the business of architecture before you actually get into the design of a project. And then the bottom 3, which are PA's programming analysis, PDD, and PPD. So excuse the order. Those 3 are the technical exams. And that's when you start introducing the actual design. So in terms of PA, you will look at a lot of environmental conditions and sun orientation and climate. And PDD and PPD, those 2 exams will start introducing mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, structural systems, a lot of systems in terms of seismic regions, so earthquakes. So arguably the bottom 3, so the 3 that I just mentioned, are the toughest, so to speak. And I say that because those 3 have the lowest passing rates, and they're also the longest. So each of the exams are roughly 4 hours, except for these 3 are roughly 5 hours. But once you pass all 6 and you have your experience and you have your degree, then you can officially call yourself an architect. You can go ahead and put that on your Instagram, your LinkedIn, your signature, and your email. But before that, you're not technically a registered architect within the state of, actually, United States. And also, when you do to sign up for your exams, you would pick the state in which you are going for the examination process, which is roughly the same in each state. There's some nuances, but I would assume the majority of you all are going to be working towards getting licensure in Florida. And once you're licensed in Florida, there's something called reciprocity, which is getting licensed in other states. And sometimes that's as simple as filling out paperwork, and sometimes it's as difficult as taking a supplemental exam, like it is in California, or sitting in front of a board and getting interviewed like it is, I believe, in Oregon. So there's different states that will require special requirements. So I don't know, Shadia, do you want to add anything else?
I was gonna say it can sound a little daunting, and it is definitely not the easiest thing to do, especially when having a full-time job and wanting to have a social life. But I think if you, and I say this, and I don't think I was the right person, like specifically when it came to balancing, because at the very beginning of my ARE journey, I was very hyper focused on the exams and was completely burnt out. But I would say just have a balance, know that you're learning, and this is not only to pass the test, but also to increase your competency when it comes to the architecture field, and that everything that we do is for the health, safety, and welfare of people and the occupants of the buildings. So Yeah, you can do it no matter what. You can become an architect. So, and there's a lot of people that are there supporting everyone that's taking tests and answering questions and becoming a resource. So,
Throughout the state of Florida, a lot of people who are on the board of directors for AIA, including Shadi and I or Barbara, will host study sessions, and like other components may host. So if you ever see anything that says like ARE study group, I would highly recommend to join that one. I also just posted in the chat a link to our AIAFlorida.org website, which we worked on. It's basically a list of free resources for the AREs. So there's also resources there that you can pay for, but there's a ton of free stuff there that I would definitely click on and at least save for when you're ready to study.
yeah.
And then quickly, different paths of architecture. I'm sure a lot of you guys know people who have gone through the architecture school program and then they decided to do something else. That's absolutely wonderful. I think we learn a ton of skills in architecture school that will prepare us for anything else, and even in the real world. These are 4 examples of people I personally know that have gone into the architecture profession. First one, you can do real estate, house flipping, interior design, because you've got all this experience with construction, and especially if you're interested in multifamily. This is something that somebody could easily do. 2, photographer, 3D renderings or animation. My dad actually did this. He actually went through school for civil engineering, but then he now works for the Lens Group as an animator and renderer. Because you learn so many programs. You're learning Photoshop, you're learning InDesign, you're learning Dreamscape, like all kinds of programs that you could use this to your benefit to do other work. Number 3, construction, renovation developers. Especially if you've been in the field for a while, you can easily work on the other side and become the client. And the last one, lawyer, educator, professor. What I mean by that is, you could teach, once you have your master's degree, you become a professor. I think in some states you require a license in architecture to become full-time, but and then there's Schiff Hardin. We talked about Schiff Hardin, who that is a law firm that a lot of architectural designers research into their lectures from Mr. Callahan. And he has his degree in architecture, or went to architecture school, and then he decided to become a lawyer, and now he defends architects. So because he has that experience in architecture, and he knows all those people, he gets all these clients to defend us if we ever get into a tiffy. So those are just some examples.
My mouse is lost. Okay.
So we're pretty much recapping towards the end. I know we've got 5 minutes. We want to save some time if you have any questions, but essentially, thank you everyone for joining this. And we want to make sure that we at least give one piece of advice, hopefully, that you heard today. But most importantly, just don't be afraid of asking questions, especially when you're like early on in your career. And even if you have experience for a long time, always ask questions for the rest of your life, because we are in a field that's ever changing and ever moving. And, always feel like a safe space to ask questions. Advocate for yourself. I think, if you're applying for a firm, ask them what resources they have for studying. And if they don't provide anything, then ask them if they can provide it. Like, advocate for yourself, because you getting licensed helps the company you're with. And asking for help and guidance kind of goes along the realms of the 2 things we just mentioned before. But you can always ask people outside. You can always ask Shadi and I for anything that you need, especially for advocating or for helping you progress in your career. So Shadi, if you have anything else to add.
No, I think you've covered it all. I'm a supporter of advocating for yourself, and honestly, it can be a little difficult, especially when you're right out of architecture school or university, and you don't know where you're standing, and you're a little bit overwhelmed by everything being thrown your way. But you are always going to be your best advocate. So do it, and don't hesitate to ask for what you want and what you need. And don't be spooked of the architecture profession. It's a lot of fun. It is overwhelming because you're learning so much, and you will continue to learn for the rest of time until you retire. And even then, I feel like you'll still learn. But it's an interesting career path. Becoming an architect is pretty amazing. You get a lot of respect. Not to say that when you're an associate, you don't, but it has a lot of weight, and it's a well-respected career. And I always like to think that you're doing positive impact and you're really helping your community and helping build the environment. And I mean, what better thing to do than to do that? So
yeah, this
okay.
this is being recorded, so we'll post it later on YouTube. And I believe we're also going to be sending out the slides to everyone who registered. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask or put it in the chat. But again, thank you everyone and happy Halloween.
We still have like 2 minutes.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions? I saw
Or
somebody,
comments?
yeah, somebody asked in the chat, which I'm glad they you guys helped clarify. So we need, Barbara mentioned 3,740 hours of AXP in order to become licensed. Thank you, Michael. And yeah, Barbara's right in that too, is that it seems like a lot, but it's, I think, absolutely the easiest part of getting your licensure, because it's just naturally, you're going to get experience when you work for a firm.
Yeah, I think I completed it in like 2.5 years. It didn't take that long.
Happy Halloween, Anna.
Happy Halloween.
Thank you for joining. Yeah, and even if like you can't get like hours in a certain category, like especially you mentioned construction is the hardest one, just meet a project manager and be like, can I tag team with you? And
Oh, someone asked,
Mhm.
yes, you can get hours while you're in school interning or shadowing. You just have to create your NCARB account
Mhm.
and you can start logging in hours. And you can actually log in hours if you work for someone that's not licensed as well. I think there's a limit on the amount of hours, but you can do that as well. You just have to create an NCARB account. And I think someone, okay, there you go, Nikki. Thank
Yeah, I
you.
just put, I don't know why the link is so long, but it's ncarb.org. And I highly suggest, especially those who have interned while they're in school, please set up your NCARB account, because you could be logging in and taking advantage of all those hours that you're working hard towards. All you need to do, you have to pay a fee, and you also have to get somebody who is at the firm you're working for to become your mentor. And I believe that's it. So it's,
Yeah, they can sign for your hours.
yeah. So yeah, if you guys have any more questions, our emails are at the bottom in orange, or you can connect with us online. Either way, we're happy to help you. But yeah, thank you again so much.
Thank you all. Appreciate
Happy
it.
Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Oh,
Bye.
someone asked one more question.
Oh, one more. Yes. Yes, you can.
Yes.
You can, the question is, can you start taking exams before you have the required hours? Absolutely. Absolutely, you can. So most of the time people finish their hours before they finish their exams. But
Yeah. Or you finish your exams and then you're waiting to finish your hours if you're
Yeah.
that person.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, girls. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Great job, ladies.
Thank you.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, Sentai.
Thanks, and Cherry.
Nice job.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Senti, I
Yeah.
have good news for you.
Oh, what is that?
Guess what? We got approved the scholarship.
Let's go. What? When's that gonna be? Is it next year?
Next year. And
Yeah.
guess how many?
Ooh.